Hello everyone, LunarDave here. It's been a minute, huh? So this is gonna be a bit more of an unscripted video. So just expect to hear a lot more ums or me repeating things every now and then. But regardless, in celebration to the fact that I am nearing 4,000 watch time hours, which means I might be able to qualify to be monetized for the first time ever, I decided I just kind of want to make a video just kind of yapping about, you know, all the thumbnails I've made relating to Corrin Fire Emblem. And I have made quite a few. I don't actually know how many I've made in total, but I guess you're going along with this video. You'll probably be able to find out at the end, right? So to start off, we're gonna start with a thumbnail I didn't really use. So this thumbnail, the I Like Fates More thumbnail, I made this at around 2021 or 2020, I believe. And this was originally going to be a video about me talking about exactly what the thumbnail says, why I liked Fates more than some other entries in the franchise. This was also during the time where Fates was not very popular. Okay, maybe saying not very popular isn't the right word. I mean, this game is still like top 2 in most sold Fire Emblem games to at least the date of this video. It gets a lot of love in Fire Emblem Heroes especially. But, you know, aside from that, in the online spaces, this game, stuff surrounding this game was pretty negative reaction-wise from the online communities. And I felt like I wanted to counterbalance that with my own sort of like video, you know, putting a bit more of just a positive video out there, right? I eventually gave up on that idea. I realized I didn't feel like I was qualified to make a video like this. So I eventually switched to making a video about my first entries video, which I did release. And that was just me talking about, you know, the first games I played in a series and how, you know, a lot of them tend to be my favorite, turns out. But regardless, I did eventually use this thumbnail for my Fire Emblem Fates Classic Hard Conquest run, which I believe was the first time I've actually played Conquest Classic Hard. So if you want to see my first time experiences of that game at that difficulty, feel free to check it out, I guess. But it is a much younger version of Dave, so, and a very, very loud version of Dave too. So just keep an eye out for that one, or I guess an ear out. In terms of design-wise for this thumbnail, there are things that I would still do to this day, and there are still some things that I would never do like this again. One of the big things I would still do today is the composition, with the subject on the right and text anything else on the left. The main reason why I have it in that placement is usually because every YouTube video has like a time card or timestamp at around the bottom right corner of a thumbnail, and that tends to block off some details, right? So I put the text on the left to avoid that issue entirely. I don't always follow this rule, of course. If I feel like a thumbnail looks better on the right side and subject on the left, I will go for that, but I will try to mitigate time cards if I can, or if I feel like it's not that big of a deal, because frankly it's never been a big enough of a deal for most content creators and most people watching that it's gonna like make or break a video. But you know, when you're making the content and you have a bit of a perfectionist mindset, or feel like you have to put in a lot of effort into it, you kind of get into those nitty-gritty details and want to do good, right? Now, in terms of what I definitely would not do here, that is my use of color correction. This was during the time when I was really addicted to being very particular with color correction, and sometimes I would just kind of overdo it, and this is basically one of the examples where I do overdo it. Corrin is blue, kind of matching with the lighting of the background, but she's like still too blue. And the thing is when you're making a thumbnail, you want it to pop out, like every subject, everything you want your audience to see. When it's so blendy, it kind of gets muddled, especially in a smaller image. That detail gets lost. So yeah, I would definitely not color correct it to this extent. I still do, just lower down the blue levels. The text here, this is, I believe, my first time utilizing text warp. So you'll see that there's a bit of a curve with this font. You know, I kind of mess around it, kind of make it stand out a little bit more, make it a little more unique, special, that kind of stuff, without it being like uber gamery mode, right? But eventually I realized, you know, I wanted to refine this thumbnail because it was, you know, it had a different purpose originally. I wanted to make one that was built for the purpose it was designed for, right? So I changed those stream thumbnails into this, which is what you'll see today. As you can tell, I massively toned down my color correction here, despite the background being, you know, the same few colors for the most part, with the blue and a bit of red, purple. I still think this is some of my best work with text for a thumbnail, at least. For the background, I used the concept art for Nor, which when I'm looking at this, I'm like, what's going on here? Because it is different from what we see in the final product. But I believe this was like a beta concept art. I'm not 100% too sure on the details because it's been a while since I've actually looked into it. But I felt like it was pretty fitting for a stream series where I play Fire Emblem Fates Conquest. And, you know, every time I do a new stream of that run, I would just swap out the characters with other Fire Emblem Fates characters, usually with, you know, either Fates arts, Kozaki, or Heroes art, which I ended up using more Heroes art later at the end there because they lended themselves better to being art for thumbnails. And of course, the last stream series thumbnail was using Nor Noble Corrin from Fire Emblem Heroes, or I guess Child of Dusk alt. And yeah, no, I really like how this thumbnail looks, even today, actually. I mean, there's some stuff that, you know, isn't perfect. One big thing was how the image looks kind of blown up, and that's just the nature of when you're trying to make an image, even when it's like high resolution, into a really big one by like really zooming into it. And because I tend to use faces a lot for the thumbnails, because I feel like that's the most marketable way you can make thumbnails, right? Using the face. And also, I did make this thumbnail, and I do think about a lot of my thumbnails with the mindset that you're not going to be looking at them at the size that you're seeing right now. Most of the time, you'll be seeing these thumbnails at the size of, you know, your literal thumb. So details like that don't get as bad or even noticeable when you're viewing it at a much, much smaller size. But yeah, no, again, I'm like pretty happy with how these thumbnails looked. Usually when I'm thinking about commissioning my thumbnails out to other people, or, you know, my design stuff, I usually show this thumbnail as one of the stuff that I have made, kind of like a mini portfolio, as sort of a way to showcase my work. Now for the actual first video thumbnail that I've made relating to Corrin Fire Emblem would be this one. It'd be my video summary series for Corrin Quest Revelation. And this one, I mean, this was the first time I like fully committed to becoming a Fire Emblem YouTuber. As some of you may already know, I was originally a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon content creator. I like to think that I've done pretty well for myself since then, but, you know, going to the thumbnail itself, the Corrins I used here were originally from a GIF of Corrin doing this pose with, you know, a fiery background based off one of those meme GIF images. And I believe this originated on Tumblr. I don't know if I can find the artist anymore because it's like really hard to track down these things when they're this old. But if I can, I'll put it up at the screen here if I can. But yeah, when I first saw that, I was like, this is like an amazing Corrin, and I decided to use it. And because, you know, it's a Corrin quest, you're gonna have like an army of Corrin, I just put multiple there. This is composed a little differently than how I would do for the thumbnails I talked about earlier, where, you know, text left, subject right, where now it's subject bottom, text up. And this isn't unfamiliar territory for me, but, you know, because of the amount of subjects on screen, I feel like I can't really do it the way I was talking about earlier. Plus, you don't always want to format your thumbnails the exact same way. But regardless, yeah, no, I'm pretty happy with how the thumbnail looked. And apparently people really do like these thumbnails, because occasionally people would see the thumbnail and say like, wow, I love it, right? And that's what you really want when you make really anything design-wise. You want people to like it, right? Now for part 2, this is one of those moments where I felt like I was at a bit of a loss of like what I wanted the thumbnail to be, because it was a part 2 to a part 1. This covered the Vala section after part 1, and I didn't really know how to portray that, so all I did was, you know, just to make it look a little bit more chaotic, I just put fiery background to make it look a little bit more intense. But I do feel like it did hurt me in the short term and long term, at least in terms of this video's performance, because one, you know, there was a massive gap in between part 1 and 2 release wise, and that's because I had like a huge personal thing going on. A lot of stuff happened. I was like in very, very different locations. But, you know, when I finally got back to, you know, I guess the status quo maybe, or when I finally got to a place in my life where I felt comfortable, I released that part 2. Yeah, I didn't really want it to change too much, and I wanted to make people know that this is like, you know, the same video series. Because it's so similar, and the fact that there was a large gap, I think hurt this video in the long term. But, you know, it is what it is. Also, sort of as a side tangent, I also had a Corrin Quest Birthright run in the middle of, in between those 2 parts. Because, you know, it was a lot easier for me to stream than make a whole video with the things going on. Design-wise, they're pretty much exactly the same as the Conquest Classic Hard stream thumbnails. Just with, you know, the opposite Hoshiden side, so I would use a bit more of reddish orange elements in there. I also put in the Corrins that were, you know, there for the Corrin Quest. Not too much to say about those thumbnails. They got the job done pretty effectively. I remember getting a criticism that my thumbnails looked standard, and I felt kind of insulted by that. I don't remember who said it, but when they said it, I was like, okay, well, I kind of gotta up my game now, right? Which, not directly, but kind of transitions well for the sake of this video into the next video thumbnail I would make, which was my video talking about the Korean version of Fire Emblem Fates. This was a video I kind of wanted to make for a while, partially because it's pretty obscure, I'd say, within the larger Fates online community. You'd never see anyone talking about it with the differences and how unique it is for the fact that it does contain Birthright and Conquest in one cartridge without it being a special edition. It has some interesting little quirks to it, and, you know, I just wanted to get that information out there, especially on YouTube, because if you look up Fire Emblem Fates Korean, you're gonna get practically nothing outside of maybe like a couple Korean Let's Players out there, which, big thank you to those guys for helping me get a general sense of how the game was compared to what I ended up playing, because, you know, there was some differences. If you watch that video, you'll know. But for the actual design of this thumbnail, I wanted to do something a little different. Or I guess, like, I wanted my thumbnail to look really, really good here, because, you know, Corrin Quest Rev Part 2 didn't perform, you know, as well as I was hoping it would. I was already expecting it to not do that amazingly, but somehow it did not do well. But in regards to this particular thumbnail, the Corrin right there with the big open wide mouth, you know, looking amazed, that is a sketch from Kozaki of her reacting to her own scale figure. And when I first saw that sketch, I'm like, that is an amazing thumbnail face. I want to use that really badly. But, you know, it was a sketch, so in order for me to use it, I had to learn how to, well, color things in. And for that, I had to watch like a couple videos on like how to color manga panels, and this was my very first attempt at it. And honestly, like, looking at this now, like, especially for the face and hair, I think I really nailed the colors here, especially with the lighting, with it going from on, like, the lighting is directly on the face with the shadows going behind her hair. Yeah, no, I think I really did a good job here. And, you know, again, subject on the right, everything else on the left. And for this one, I didn't really want to put any text here, I guess, except for the text that's on the game box art here. So I just made the box art as big as I could fit on the screen to really emphasize, you know, what this is gonna be. Because when I'm titling a video that you've never played this version of Fire Emblem Fates, you want to show them something that they've probably never seen before, right? And also, it was convenient that it was a good size to stretch it that big, because it covers Corrin's right hand, or I guess left if from this angle, but, you know, it's a right hand, because that hand isn't actually drawn in completely, because the scale figure that the sketch originally came from blocked it. But, you know, I'd say that this was probably one of, like, it's top 2 in, like, the most important videos I've made for my channel ever since I started making Fire Emblem content. Mostly because it's kind of what got me into the door of talking with other Fire Emblem creators, and it's also what got a lot of people who are into FE to, you know, actually start watching the stuff that I do put out. But, you know, the only reason why it might not be, like, directly the first, despite it being, like, my most viewed thing ever for Fire Emblem, there's another video that kind of beats it out, but like in a different way. So they kind of are like equal levels of importance for me. And of course, another big important factor of why this video is important is that it really shaped on how I was going to make thumbnails from then on for a long while, even to this day. You'll see that directly in the next video I would make, which was the FE6 in China video, where I used a manga panel directly from the Fire Emblem 6 manga. And I mean, I really like this thumbnail. It looks really good. It's some of my best work out there. Unfortunately, the video performed really badly, but you know, it's Fire Emblem 6. Like, what are you gonna do about it, right? But going to the next thumbnail with Corrin in it, it'll be 3 Corrins. This is the Fire Emblem Fates manga video where I talk about, you know, the manga of Fire Emblem Fates. This video came up for a few reasons, or the reason why I wanted to make it. Firstly, I always wanted to make a video talking about this manga because, again, in the wider online sphere of Fire Emblem Fates, nobody talks about this. And since the running theme of my channel, ever since the Korean Fates video, was like, hey, let's talk about something, you know, lesser known in the community, I felt like this was a pretty appropriate thing to go for. And also didn't help the fact that there was a slight demand by one guy for a video like this to be made. That would be LagSpike776, where he asked in like one of the big FETuber discords, he wanted a video like this to be made. And then Pappas chimed in saying like, I already made a video talking about all the Fire Emblem Fates manga, but he was like, no, I want just a video on Fates. And I'm like, don't worry, dog, I got you. So that also helped motivate me to actually like make and go through with this video. I do feel like I have at least shifted at least a couple of people, you know, letting them know that, you know, this exists, and for the people that did know that this existed, giving them the motivation to, you know, finally sit down and read it, because this is a pretty short manga series. You can read it in like 3 hours, maybe tops. It's like 18 chapters, so it's not particularly long. So if you haven't read it, read it. But yeah, going to the thumbnail itself, like the previous few thumbnails, I would use a sketch or black and white art from, in this case, again from Kozaki, from one of the promotional sketches. I don't exactly remember which, what the sketch meant exactly. It's been a while. I can't remember if it was like an anniversary or just game releasing a promotional sketch. But I felt like this one was a pretty appropriate one to use, mostly because they were holding like a piece of paper, and like that's like a pretty cute way of showing a cover of a manga. Now, one big issue, as you could probably tell immediately, is that this was a promotional sketch. I believe was in 4x3 or in portrait style, so I couldn't exactly directly blow it up on a 16:9 image without most of the details being gone. And I wanted to still show that they were holding, you know, the manga cover. In this case, having Leo there in the center there, just to signify that, you know, Leo is the main character of this manga. And so all I really did was I just put a border there, and it kind of makes it look like they're kind of peeking through a little opening there, showing like, hey, check this out, guys. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with this thumbnail. I'm also pretty happy with how the video performed. And it once again really solidified that I was in this for the long run. And because of that, I kind of wanted to do something a little big. So eventually, pretty much immediately after this video, I grabbed as many people as I could contact as possible and had them do a project called #Conquest Talkmeverse, or just CQ Talkmeverse, where a lot of creators would just kind of gaslight people about, you know, Talkme, specifically Conquest Talkme, being in Conquest, or just, you know, showing Conquest Talkme, just kind of adding fuel to the fire and confusion. And this was the first time I worked with a really large amount of people. But aside from that, like, I know once again this isn't a thumbnail with Corrin in it, but I just wanted to briefly run over this along with one other one. But you know, this thumbnail was a bit rushed actually. So as you can tell, this is another colored thing from specifically the Fates manga, where Takumi is reaching out for the Yato, and then it like burns him because he can't wield it. And I wanted to signify that, like, what if Takumi joined you in Conquest? So I thought this was a pretty striking image here. But that was pretty much all I did. I didn't even color it, and then I kind of put it off until the very last minute. So I had to quickly make it, and eventually this is what came out of it. Honestly, within the time frame, I think I did a okay job. But, you know, you can definitely tell there's some like rough spots here. The text, I just went with like whatever I felt comfortable with coloring wise. I feel like I would have done something else here. And for Talk-Me, like the coloring isn't even done. Like you can tell by the blue stuff. But I think the fact that it's glowing kind of helped add like a bit of mystique to it. There's some rough details. But at the end of the day, like this project I would say was a really, really massive success. We got a couple of people, you know, noticing and like was just confused. Was like, what's going on here? This is still one of my best performing Fire Emblem videos as of the recording of this video at about like 4.5k. So I think it's in second, just right behind the Korean Fates video. The next thumbnail I wanted to briefly cover was the thumbnail I made for Lag Spikes' top 10 Fire Emblem Fates weapons. I also edited that video if you're curious, which you could probably tell if you've seen some of my videos after this one. But one of the big things was, you know, after I was pretty much done with this, Lag was like, bro, are you gonna make a thumbnail for me too or something like that? And then I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll make one. And, you know, this one was relatively simple. I took a panel from one of the Fire Emblem 4 comas, specifically the one where Corrin wants to like nerf Xander. So he gives Xander like a bottle to like, that can't be as harmful as like a really like Siegfried, right? So he just goes like, I see. And then he like breaks it. So it's like all sharp and stuff. And now Xander's like, now I'm ready. And Corrin goes, now just a second. And all I did was replace the bottle with the bronze sword, specifically from Fire Emblem Awakening, because I could not find a good anything for the bronze sword for Fire Emblem Fates. Probably these days, if I were to do this thumbnail, especially for the bronze sword, I would probably rip it straight out of the game, like the model itself. I would put it in Blender and like the snip clipping a screenshot tool to like grab it and throw it on Photoshop and just kind of use it from there on. But you know, at that time I just used the Awakening one and I think it worked pretty well. And yeah, and of course I think I did a really particularly good job with this thumbnail because this video performed really well, which I am very happy about. And in the comments you'll see like a lot of people occasionally talking about, you know, wow, like the editing here is really good. And every time I see that comment, like I still sometimes come back to this video and just like, if I want to feel good about myself, stroke my ego a little, I go to the comment section of this video. But we gotta go back to Corrin Fire Emblem, right? The next video I would make is the other video I would think is in contention for what my most important Fire Emblem video is. It's the I want you to donate a coin for Corrin Quest video, where it's just me making a recruitment video asking people to make Corrins for me. Especially since I had a new format using Google Forms to put on a public spreadsheet. So not only would this benefit me, but it would benefit anyone else who wants to do their own Corrin Quest. This was also partially because of the fact that you can't really do Corrin Quests legit anymore. I mean, you can, using stuff like Street Pass and local wireless, but that's unrealistic for the average person to want to do. And one of the biggest hurdles of doing a Corrin Quest is gathering the people necessary. And, you know, I feel like having the spreadsheet out there kind of eliminates a certain barrier of entry for some people. Especially since the main method nowadays is by safe hacking, and I would say that it is pretty intuitive for the most part. But yeah, this video, you know, when you look at my entire channel, it isn't like my most highly watched video, but what it did do, it had some of the highest like ratio of people watching it, subscribing, or joining my Discord server. So it's not important in the fact of like how successful it was in terms of the raw view count. I consider it top 2 most important Fire Emblem videos that I made, at least at this point in time, because of how it really kickstarted the community that I would eventually have today, which if you guys are watching this, hi! A lot of you guys were first introduced to my channel thanks to this video, and I can't be more thankful enough for that. But we gotta talk about thumbnails, right? We're not here to talk about videos. And this one, okay, so I guess to start, the Corrin here, This Corrin was drawn by an artist named Irene, who is a great Corrin artist. I really highly suggest that you check her out. But I remember one time she sent this image of Corrin. It was originally Corrin pointing a gun directly at the screen. Just kind of being really funny here. And I was like, that's an amazing thumbnail. And I asked her later on if I could use it for my projects. And she said like, yeah, no, it's cool. And I was like, hell yeah. The reason why I wanted to use it was because it kind of looked like if I put a direct finger pointing image replacing the gun, it looked like the "I want you" propaganda that you'd see back in like World War II stuff. I think it's World War II, right? I graduated high school, but yeah, no, I felt like it worked great. Just having a big, bold "I want you." As you've probably noticed, this is one of the few instances where I've swapped the text and subject from left to right. And that is because, again, I already kind of mentioned this. If it looks better this way, I will go for it. And this is one of the situations where if I were to like mirror this image composition wise, it just would not look as good. So yeah, that is pretty much the story of this thumbnail. I'm very happy. Thank you, Irene. Again, highly recommend you check out her artwork. But the show must go on. Which, this is going to be the first stream thumbnail in a little bit. So this was the first Corrin Quest run I would do directly after the Corrin Quest recruitment video. And for this one, okay, where do I even begin with this one, right? I guess to start with, the big thing about this Corrin Quest was I was going to be doing kind of a raffling rolling system by using marbles on stream for pretty much all the Corrins that were in the spreadsheet. And because I was going to do this on stream, rather than, you know, curating the list of Corrins I wanted from that spreadsheet, I felt like it was pretty appropriate to have the video mostly centered around the fact that I was going to be making these Corrins and adding them into the Corrin Quest. So there were a few things that I was thinking of, like there was like cooking Corrins, but eventually I would land on baking Corrins. There isn't much of a deep reason why I specifically chose that one. I felt like it just felt the most appropriate and most fitting for what I was doing. And because of that, I would like make this whole stream overlay where I would put like Pat Derrick's bobbing Corrin in an oven and just kind of have it look like they're being baked. I remember asking Pat Derrick if I could use this specific image of Corrin. And he was like, nah bro, it's chill. I was gonna like make a green screen for this, like pretty much a little bit after you would have asked this anyway. And I'm like, oh, sick. Heck yeah. So that made my job a lot easier. For this specific thumbnail, I felt like, again, it felt most appropriate to signify that this was probably gonna be mostly me making Corrins. And it looking a bit funny, I thought, you know, let's put a bunch of these Pat Derrick's Corrins on a cookie tray and just, you know, just put baking Corrin Quest to show that this is a Corrin Quest run. You probably have noticed, oh no Dave, the text hit the bottom right corner. That blocks the text. And you'd be right. Unfortunately, I feel like that's the only place I could really put the text here. And at the end of the day, the most important words of baking Corrin is still very visible. So, you know, it is just one of those moments. But considering how well liked this thumbnail is, I think the pros far outweigh the cons here. So from then on, a lot of the thumbnails of the Corrin Quest I would do would be loosely, roughly what would be going on stream, or like kind of signifying what part of the game we're at. And you could really visibly see that in the next thumbnail here. So for this part of the stream, we were going to be going through chapter 12 of Conquest, which is the pot map. And you know, like, everyone makes pot jokes about it, so I felt it was pretty appropriate to have a bunch of pots, each of them filled with a little Pat Derrick's Corrin. And because of course pot, weed, I also gave one of the Corrins a big blunt. I think that's a blunt. I don't know. I don't do that kind of stuff. If you're more knowledgeable in the art of the blunt, let me know if I used the right one here. And because Elise is pretty sick, I also put her in a pot and her saying help me. I wonder how many people have actually noticed Elise being there from just looking at the thumbnail from that size. But yeah, no, this thumbnail was very particularly well liked. Which also applies to the next two thumbnails I'm about to talk about, which is the one where, you know, you can, gee whiz, I wonder what part of the game this stream will cover. And yeah, this is indeed the Shura map. And you know, Shura, you have to determine whether you're recruiting him or Boots. And since we don't really need Shura, Boots is obviously the immediate default answer I think a lot of people will come to. Unless you want the Killer Bow. But, you know, when you're looking at the Boots and Killer Bow value-wise, there's there's kind of a big difference there. But, you know, I kind of like the idea of all these Corrins just all thinking about the Boots. And then Shura just going like, why are you looking at me like that? I remember I posted this thumbnail a little later after the stream, and it kind of just randomly blew up. You know, I guess people really liked the Boots joke and the fact of the absurdity of the fact that Paterek's Corrins are there. And of course, for the next thumbnail, I would replicate a meme. This is, I believe, from Circle Tunes HD, the original one of like me and the boys, I think 3 a.m. looking for beans. And I felt like it'd be a cute thumbnail to make, a really funny one. And this one also did pretty well in terms of like thumbnail performance. I have two different versions of this thumbnail actually. There is one where it's like the Corrins like this, and then there's one where the Corrins look like shadow monsters or something. But I eventually ended up using the ones where, you know, it's pretty visible that they're Corrin, mostly just to better signify that these are Corrins, make them more visible. But I do actually kind of prefer the look of the shadow monstery ones, so who knows, maybe do you guys want me to change a thumbnail for a VOD? I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, whether you like, you know, the way it is now, or you actually prefer the shadow monster looking Corrins, looking a little bit silly there. But also, this is supposed to reference the Mokushu Ninja Hell map. And I guess if you like, you know, really stretch your your imagination, you can kind of see it. It has that like same aesthetic of like green, yellow, brown going on in like hallways. If you've caught that detail without me saying that, you know, congratulations. The next one, this one is again me replicating a meme. This isn't really directly based off any portion of the game, and honestly, if I did do that, I think yeah, now that I'm thinking about it and realizing when in the game this is, because I'm pretty sure this is when we first set foot into Hoshido. This is supposed to be in reference to a meme, an Elmo meme specifically. Elmo just kind of going like, oh, with like a big nuclear blast going out in the background. I had no real motivation of like, you know, it didn't really relate to anything going on in the stream. I didn't really have any idea what I wanted to do. So I just kind of like, well, this meme's kind of funny if Corrin was in it. So I just kind of put it there. This wouldn't even be the first time has contributed to, you know, these thumbnails in the first place, because, you know, the Corrin Quest Rev Corrin was based off a GIF of Elmo, you know, with the fiery background GIF. So yeah, this thumbnail, when I posted it on Twitter, performed huge numbers too, kind of like the Shura thumbnail. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this one. Maybe not the placement of it in relation to when in the run I was in. Like, I wasn't really thinking about that, but now that I am, like, oh god. But, you know, that was not my intention. Yeah, no, please don't. Please don't take that seriously. That was definitely not my intention. But the next thumbnail, you can probably tell when this is. This is specifically in... This obviously takes place at the chapter 25 portion of the game with, you know, lightning like Ryoma. This is sort of based off my Ryoma low tier god meme edit that I made a little bit before this thumbnail, which if you guys seen that image, yeah, no, I'm the one who made it. And every time I see someone else use it, the GIF version or like the raw picture itself, you know, I feel a little happy inside. You know, I remember when Pavis used it to advertise one of his streams on Twitter, and I just felt like, oh, that felt pretty cool, because Pavis was one of my biggest inspirations for making content, even before I was into making Fire Emblem. But that aside, with this thumbnail itself, I had this specific Corrin, Carlisle, have a sort of rivalry with Ryoma. And especially during chapter 12, he didn't actually manage to kill Ryoma. Like, he could have, but he barely just didn't. So it was just kind of like a, you got away this time type moment. And, you know, this is sort of like the rematch of the century going on here. And if you look at the background, you can very, very roughly see the Costco hot dog sign there. And that is because one of Carlisle's main weapons, we nicknamed it Costco hot dog. Why we did that, I think it was because, you know, I mentioned Costco hot dogs a few times and people really like that. I mean, who doesn't like the Costco hot dog? But yeah, you could kind of tell the quality of this one isn't as high as the other ones. And that is a big part of that is the fact that I make these on a week-to-week basis. Like, I pretty much do these the night before. Sometimes ideas aren't in the tank, but in spite of that, this is definitely one of those thumbnails that appeals to my base subscribers compared to someone who is just getting into it or is seeing this thumbnail for the first time. They'll probably think like, what the heck is going on here? Okay, so the next thumbnail is going to be the last thumbnail for the Corrin Quest Conquest streams. And I mean, this one's pretty self-explanatory. This is just the Takumi betrayal cutscene screenshot, just with plush Corrin. I had to Photoshop, remove Takumi out, and put my own plush Corrin. I would take a picture of it and I'll sort of essentially rotoscope it into this. It was a little tricky getting the fires to work out here, but I think I really nailed how it looked in. And I remember there's like the small subset of like, you know, plush Corrin fans who take like pictures of their Corrin, and I remember one of them saying like, you know, I really like this one. And you know, I can't help but feel good about that. It always feels good when someone compliments your work, and this is just one of those instances. But yeah, these thumbnails are looked back very fondly for me, and I'm pretty sure my audience, because a lot of my mainstay community members came in through these streams. So yeah, no, I look back at the stream series very, very fondly. Which of course, the show had to go on, so I decided to just kind of one-up myself. I already did Rev, Birthright, and Conquest here, so I thought, you know what, let's take another page out of Pavis's book here and do chat plays, but with Corrin Quest. And I made this announcement video thumbnail. Now this one is another recolored Corrin, specifically for one of the 4 comas, where Corrin, I believe, is sort of like deciding between the Hoshidan Noble and Nor Noble classes, because like the siblings are kind of arguing, because this is like a Rev run, right? the 2 sibling factions are like, no, Corrin should go into this class, and then Corrin's like, oh, which one do I go with? I believe that's the 4 coma that I used this from. And yeah, I colored it and just kind of have her react to like, yeah, I guess I'll do what chat tells me to do, right? And for this one, for the chat message down there, that is directly taken by one of my community members, which is Ajay, who sent me this amazing my move here. So I was like, yep, that's the one. it's a long one too, so it added to the comedic factor. Obviously there's Pat Derek's Corrins, because I felt like that was kind of the brand at this point. And I put plush Corrin in the background, looking at these Corrins like a wise old sage. But yeah, that was an announcement of all time. I also started doing a little podcast stream thing, kind of like the WAN show or something like that, called LunarDave's Treehouse. It was a simple concept. It was like, what if I could buy everything I could possibly want, like right now, what would it be and how much would that cost? And to like make it, you know, a comedic, funny title and fit with the branding, I had it with like, oh yeah, I took my wife's credit card and let's see what I'll use it on. And in this case, it'd be Corrin. And this is just kind of an image of like Corrin looking at her phone, seeing the bank statements and seeing like, what the heck is going on? What did Dave buy with my credit card? And this specific Corrin emote was made by Sierra117. Big fan of their work. I bought this emote set for like $3, which is like, it's the best like $3 to $5 I spent in my entire life for Corrin related stuff. So yeah, big props to them. For the next thumbnail, it's the first chat plays Corrin Quest thumbnails. This is probably the most unique one out of all the ones, because the other ones are just Meet the Heroes art. There's like one where there's like a flushed emote Corrin. I just kind of like plaster on that face just to kind of make it a little bit more funny and attention grabbing. But the concept's pretty similar. Composition wise, it's very, very similar to Pavis's chat plays. I kind of want it to be familiar while still, you know, fitting with the way I design stuff. And obviously this first thumbnail, it's basically just a bunch of marbles with Corrin faces on there. just kind of rolling around on marbles on stream, because that is how I roll the Corrins in Corrin Quest. There's a couple emotes that you'll see here. I believe this is the first time I used Lottie's Corindoro, as you see right there, next to Take Gender. That one's kind of an inside joke there. There's also, I think, Ray Dingo's emote there, and also the Anger Fium Corrin emote. I actually don't know who originally drew the original image of that Corrin. Like, this one's an edit of an already existing Corrin emote. I don't know who originally made that one. So if you guys know who it is, be sure to tell me in the comments below. I forgot who made the specific edit, but I remember them seeing it and they were like pretty happy that, you know, their little edit made it in. But yeah, that's pretty much these chat plays Corrin Quest thumbnails. I'm pretty sure there's one where I made like a 1,000-yard stare one. That one I liked a little bit. The one where Corrin looks like she's having a bit, like a really, really big headache. I think those ones consistently did the best out of all like the Corrin Quest chat plays thumbnails, which was a little strange, but I guess it added, you know, to the fact that, you know, the chat plays is kind of a stressful environment. But yeah, the next one with Corrin in it, I mean, this one's pretty simple. It's just a tier list stream with me and Bloog, you know, making multiple tier lists of the Fire Emblem Fates cast and all that jazz. And I'm pretty sure we did a couple personality quizzes together just to have some fun out there. I think we had like a vegetable tier list or something as well. If you want to just know our food taste, you could you could just hit up there. And again, the Corrin here was drawn by Sierra117. And yeah, after a while, you know, these were pretty much all the thumbnails I was making up till the Corrin Quest Birthright summary video, which, yeah, there is a pretty substantial gap in between the streams and the summary video itself. This was very much in lieu with the Corrin Quest Rev Lunatic video summary series that I made, just in one package rather than two parts. This one is commissioned art by JD Writer 02. He's a good friend of mine at this point, I'd like to think. I don't know, we're Twitter oomps, so you know that's the highest status you can have in terms of online friendship, I hear. But aside from that, I commissioned him for, you know, 3 Corrin. The first one in the back would be Kui, as that was the main Lord Corrin for this run, and then the 2 here is Brogrel and Rasha. I know it's Rocher, I'm pronouncing it as Rasha. But yeah, one of the big things for the Birthright Corrin Quest run was that Brogrel and Rasha, these 2 Corrins, kind of got shipped together, and they sort of became like almost the main characters for the stream run. So I kind of had to put them as the main focus here, and it felt cute to have it in a very romantic-ish look to it. So I just called it like the greatest love story in Corrin Quest history. So I took, you know, the artwork that Jader gave me, and I made my own background here. It's just a My Castle background with some like neat effects there. You can actually tell that the space background is there. But yeah, one thing about the thumbnails whenever I like commission someone is I tend to send them like a Photoshop rough draft, just kind of like plastered images together, kind of like signifying like how I want it to be either composed or look. And I'll just show up like what the prototype rough draft image I sent to Jader here. As you can tell, it is a little different, but it conveys the same idea of like you know, the person in the back there is just kind of like dumbstruck, while the other 2, you know, people are just kind of like really going at it. And as you can tell, the composition isn't one-to-one, but I think Jader did a really, really good job here. So yeah, if you want to see good artwork, also check out JD Writer 02. And before I forget, you know, I already mentioned this a few times, like check out like Pac Derek's stream, Lottie, Irene, like all the other artists I've mentioned already. These are wonderful artists that I've gotten to know and, you know, consider my friends. So I can't help, you know, just say thank you for helping me out with a lot of these thumbnails and, you know, other stuff that I've worked on. Going to the next one, I remember for the last thumbnail for Chat Plays Corrin Quest, I wanted to do something a little different, and I had like this in mind. There isn't too much to say about here. It's just Corrin holding a knife, and Takumi is like, oh shit! This one was pretty good, and then I would start using the same format for the Chat Plays Corrin Quest Paralogs, which was kind of a short-lived thing because people were kind of getting a bit petered out with the Chat Plays Corrin Quest format. Understandably so, because it was we kind of had our fun with it, right? I don't want to drag it on for more than it was actually worth. The next one here is the Corrin Quest Draft Race thumbnail. This was a collaboration with me and It's PND, where we would do a literal Corrin Quest draft race. So we would do one stream where we pick and choose what Corrins we were gonna get, and then the day after or something like that, we would race to see who could beat Fire Emblem Fates Conquest as soon as possible. We ended it at around like the 6-hour mark, so if you want to know how fast we can beat Fire Emblem Fates, that's probably roughly the amount of time it would take us. I remember when I was given the proposal for this collab, I was just kind of caught off guard because it felt so random. Like, it was just one day I would just get like a message on my Twitter DMs. I was just like, huh, who's this guy? PND. I've never heard of this guy. He was like, hey, LunarDave, you wanna collab with me, do a Corrin Quest draft race? So I knew he wasn't like a bot or anything, or like he didn't get hacked or anything like that. So I was like, okay, this guy's legit. He makes like good videos. He does a lot of auto battle challenge runs. So me and him worked together. It took a while for us to get started, of course, because we had the chat place Corrin Quest run and we had like another thing going on. I don't exactly remember when exactly we like said yes and let's go for it, and how long I had to have him wait, but I think it proved a bit fruitful for both of us here. And of course, with the thumbnail here, it's pretty straightforward. It's Pat Derrick's Corrin once again, just riding a Mario Kart Wii cart, just like edited a little bit to be a bit more blue and silver. And as you can probably tell, the emblem there is a corn emote. You know, I don't think I have to explain why I put that there, but if I do, maybe you should go on the internet a little bit more. This next one, pretty self-explanatory. This is my Path of Radiance blind run, and you know, I wanted to format it in a way where it's like Fire Emblem Fates player or fan plays Path of Radiance for the first time, you know, just kind of getting that like ooh intrigue there, and you know, just to signify that I am a Fates fan, I just put Corrin there, like a specific screenshot of Corrin just staring up, which was a particularly funny image to me. I don't know why. It kind of gave the same vibe as Ike there. Honestly, they're kind of both staring at me, and I don't know, they don't look so happy. Maybe let's move on, right? The next one here, oh, this one, oh my god. Okay, so, oh, the story behind this one is so good. So one time during Pavis's chat plays run, I hopped in for a while and just started chatting with people, and I would just essentially, I would do like engagement bait stuff. Kind of like, you know, chat, press 1 if you do this. And I don't remember what the exact trigger was, but at some point the topic of showers got mentioned. I don't remember if I started it or someone else started it. I certainly added fuel to the fire, but there was one guy who said, like, his name was Custon. It was like, you know, I don't shower as much as other people would want, or something along the lines of that. And then Pat was like, what do you mean by this? And then he said, like, I only shower like once a week. And we were like, what the heck? And, you know, it caused like a huge tangent in the chat and stream. Like, everything had to stop, right? We had to address this issue, and I was like, you know what would be the perfect LunarDave Treehouse stream the next day? Yeah, it would be like, which Fire Emblem Fates character showers the most, tier list. And I remember the Pavcord people like saw it and they were like, ain't no way someone's doing this, considering what we were talking about the day before. And yeah, no, this is a thumbnail that isn't particularly like amazing. Like, you know why, you know, all the details at this point. You know, there's steamy background for a shower, there's soap, Corrin, she's holding a bar of soap, there's a tier list. But this one has fond memories simply of the fact of the funny memories that it holds for me. And of course, the next one would be the Corrin Quest Conquest Log series. So I wanted to do a Corrin Quest video summary series, just like the Corrin Quest runs I've done in the past. It felt fitting, but I did feel like I was putting way too much effort for one video for the amount of views I got, so I thought maybe it'd be a better idea if I would release them in parts instead, kind of like Excelblum. And you could probably tell what this thumbnail was inspired by was definitely Excelblum's steps. It's the ones where he puts like step 1 through, like, you know, the amount of chapters and all that stuff, and just puts big like step 1, step 2, and he shows like kind of a thumbnail of gameplay of like what's kind of happening. And this is basically my take on that kind of format. Instead of calling it steps, I called it logs, just to be different, you know. I don't want to like take things one for one. I don't really feel good about that, but I'd like to have like my own spin or take on, you know, other people's formats. And this was one of them. Eventually, you know, yeah, so this one is pretty self-explanatory. A Corrin named Scarlet dies like 3 times, and this is showcasing one of the reasons why she would die. She got frozen because I forgot Flora could freeze here, and I was like, oh boy, god damn it. And then for log 1, this was the first time when Corrin Quest bribes were introduced, timeline wise, and in like the video and like the stream summary stuff. Yeah, I think it showcases that pretty well, you know, Corrin on the top side, but underneath the table people start bribing in Corrins. It's, you know, if you're not familiar with my content, I charged like $15 for these bribes. But yeah, I would make more of these logs. I haven't gotten past 1. I've mostly finished log 2. Like it's getting pretty close to being finished. It's just mostly the fact that the amount of effort I put into those videos, even still, even for like 5-minute videos, right? And not like, you know, long 40-minute one. The amount of views I get is just negligible. I do appreciate the fact that, you know, almost every one of those views are from primarily my subscribers. You know, it does show that, you know, I actually have, you know, people who want to watch my stuff, and that feels pretty good. But, you know, when I'm not growing at all with these videos, I feel like this isn't the direction I want to take the channel. But yeah, I'll probably release log 2. Maybe I'll trudge on through the other logs, but yeah, it's not a priority for me at the moment, especially with some other projects I'm working on that, you know, I'm not going to say here, but you'll probably see in the next few months. The next one here, this was my Corrin Quest Rebirth video. I mean, this I couldn't really think of a good idea of how to like portray it, so all I did was just have Corrin here looking like she's building a spirit bomb with all these Pat Corrins. And yeah, it works, you know. people know what they want, and they want Corrin looking very silly in thumbnails, so hey, it works. Now for the Rebirth stream series. The first one, I was particularly tired that day, and I didn't really have I couldn't really think of any like ideas for a thumbnail. So I decided, you know, we're revealing Corrins much in the same way of like the marbles and the Baking Corrin Quest thumbnail. So I decided to reuse one of my Corrin Quest Birthright meme edits of Corrin Speed Eaters. Just kind of like, you know, showcasing like, hey, we're going to be revealing these Corrins that are going to be in for this run. So yeah, that one's pretty simple, self-explanatory. And hey, it worked pretty well because like it was already pretty well suited to be like in my thumbnail format. So I'm glad I made that for the Corrin Quest Birthright run, because otherwise I just don't know what I would have done. The next one here, I decided to like add to like the bribe fuel. I put Corrin in a dark alleyway and holding like, you know, trading in the Corrin plushes, saying like, so you want Corrins, huh? Kind of like these plushes were like an illegal commodity, which honestly, like, Corrin plushes have gotten like significantly more difficult to find, I've noticed. Like I have one, right? But I would like to link someone to a plush if, you know, they want one, because these plushes are very cute. But anywhere online, like especially like recently when I checked, I just couldn't find any. They weren't on eBay. They're obviously definitely not on like platforms like Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or Amazon. Like I can't find them anywhere. So like if you guys can like tell me where you guys find new or even used Corrin plushes, let me know. I don't know, I'd like maybe get another one just to have like a backup, you know, in case one goes bad, or, you know, you can never have too much of any Corrin merch, as my little brain worms would like to say here. Anyway, on to the next one. Allow us to introduce ourselves. This one is based off the VeggieTales meme of the same, you know, title here as the text there. Once again, I mean, this is kind of loosely like chapter based. This has the boat map as the background here, but aside from that, you know, it's based off the 3 VeggieTales characters. Just kind of like, yeah, it allows us to introduce ourselves. Kind of the same expression for that Pat Derek's Corrin in the center, Lottie's Corrin Doro. You know, it felt right to have like the short one be the Doro and plush Corrin on the left. I think this one did pretty well. I remember people liking this one a lot. But I also feel like that's partially because people really like Lottie's Corrin Doro a lot. And honestly, I get it. Like, it's a very, very cute image. So yeah. Next one. Yeah, I mean, the text kind of explains it pretty well. I stayed up till like, I don't know, like it was like 7, 9 a.m. Like I was dead, right? Like I only had like a few hours before the stream, so like I was gonna take a nap at most. I'm actually shocked I didn't sleep through the stream schedule, but yeah, the save saved, meaning like FEF Twiddler broke during the end of the previous streams. You know, I saved it, you know, I fixed it. I couldn't make a better thumbnail by then, so I just reused stuff, and shockingly it worked. I don't know, I guess people really like this image of Corrin. I guess the thumbnail text here kind of sold it a little bit. The next one is the worst Corrin Quest heist in history. This was based off the Palace Makareth chapter, which in Rebirth they really emphasize you getting like the rewards, and it's also an escape map, so it is kind of like a heist, right? So that's my idea of that one. I put Dragon Herbs there because I believe that was one of the rewards that you'd find, and you know, I would just put robbery, burglar masks on these Corrins, just kind of signifying that, yeah, we're stealing and no one will ever know. And there's a vault in the background. At this point, you kind of get what's going on here. The next one, this was the final Corrin Quest Rebirth stream here. And I mean, this one's pretty... Actually, no, there's a bit of a story. I mean, FEF Twiddler broke once again. One big thing about ROM hacks, FEF Twiddler was not designed with ROM hacks in mind, so it like crashes, breaks, and throws a fit. And because these are my main ways of getting Corrins, you know, I have to figure this out. It's kind of like I'm hacking the mainframe. I eventually figured it out, and I'm like, we're in. And I reused the hoodie Corrin. I put sunglasses and have it be based off like the hacking the mainframe, top text, bottom text, because that's like, you know, what the kids are into these days, right? I say that as if I'm not still a kid. And I say that I'm still a kid when I'm 21. Oh my god. I'm getting older, man. This is... I don't know where I fall now. It's a little strange. But okay, next thumbnail. This is the Corrin Quest Silent Waves hack run stream. This is the first one. I didn't make an announcement video for this one. I just posted on Twitter and other, you know, picture-based platforms that I release stuff on. And this thumbnail was directly ripped from the advertisement. I forgot to save the PSD, so I like cropped it and, you know, turned it around, which is why the QR code looks like that. That is the only reason. Yeah. Again, this Corrin specifically was recolor based off one of the Fire Emblem Fates 4 comas once again, and this specific one was when Corrin finally decides on a class when she's determining between Hoshido and Nor Noble, and she's like, I got it! I'm not gonna run away from my like problems or whatever. And then she switched to, funnily enough, Lucina's class. I did a couple edits here. I gave her buck teeth just to add to the cuteness factor, and a lot of people like that. I'm only noticing now that there's like a slight error with like the tongue there, but you know what, it's fine. It's fine, no one's gonna notice that until now that I mentioned it. Oh god. But yeah, that's why this thumbnail is the way it is. But you know, it really worked. People really like this one, and also I'm pretty sure you can scan this QR code from the thumbnail size itself. I don't recommend you doing it now because, you know, we're changing up how the Corrin Quest will work, mostly with like how skills, personal weapons, and stuff like that are gonna change things. Basically, we're gonna make things a little bit more balanced because I essentially let people do anything and whatever they want, and that's kind of created a feedback loop of everyone. You know, if you're a staff unit, you always go staff savant. So I want there to be like a bit of a consequence if you're gonna build Corrins like this, right? If you're gonna have like crazy skills or a crazy personal weapon that's like +7, right? The next one. So this one's not a Fire Emblem thumbnail, but this is my short-lived Triforce Heroes stream run with me, Scarf, and Hotel New Mario. Both of them are like my personal Discord friends, and Discord friends. Oh, sorry, because one of them I know in real life, Scarf, and then the other is like a Discord friend that I've known for a long while. But this one's pretty self-explanatory, as I always say, and very straightforward. It's just Triforce Heroes, but I put recolored Corrins on with Pat Derrick's and 2 pictures of my own plush Corrins that I essentially rotoscoped in. And I don't know, I really like this one. I really like the red Corrin especially. I actually really like the color work I put into recoloring them as well. So yeah, Next one, Corrin questing on the go. Okay, this one has a bit of a story. In about a few weeks from now, I'm going to go to another country for a few months. And because of that, I wasn't sure if I would be able to bring my computer. Now I know I can, but you know, at this point in time, I couldn't realistically. So I was like, okay, well, you know, can I do it on my laptop? Because my laptop isn't like that weak. It's actually pretty decent, but it's definitely designed with like graphic designers or, you know, light video editors in mind rather than full-on streaming, right? So I basically, you know, decided to stream this entire stream on my laptop. It worked surprisingly well, but it wasn't perfect either. You know, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna see if I can somehow bring my computer over. And now I figured out a pretty decent way. So I'm definitely covered on that aspect. As for the thumbnail itself, I mean, it's a little picture of my setup with my laptop there. And I put a image of Corrin in, I believe, one of the 4 comas. I don't exactly remember where this one came from, to be honest. This was already pre-colored, so that helped a lot with the effort I put in here. And I put a gaming chair behind her, so it looks like she's sitting down and getting ready to stream with us, right? And then obviously the laptop screen has all the Corrins for the Corrin quest. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this thumbnail. This one took a little bit. I had to color correct my desk setup a lot because it was very, very yellow, especially due to the lighting of my room, because all my lights are like sunshiny yellow. So it doesn't particularly lend itself well when I want like this kind of look for the thumbnail, right? So I had to like color correct it, I had to paint over some stuff, etc, etc. But it was worthwhile. As you could probably see, there's actually a plush Corrin on top of one of my speakers there. Next one, time traveling to save Corrin quest. Okay, so this one, it's a similar in vein to the other like Reaper thumbnails where, you know, FEF Twiddler broke, and I thought I found a solution to the problem I had with Silent Waves. Because the issue with Silent Waves is that they change up the chapter stuff like a lot. And because of that FEF Twiddler, they see something unusual with the chapter data and they're like, ew, gross! And like, you know, it breaks and crashes and throws a fit. So I was like, what if I just use an older version of FEF Twiddler that doesn't have that kind of stuff in? And yeah, no, it definitely worked. So for this thumbnail, I was like, okay, this is how I'm gonna save Corrin Quest by time traveling, going back to the older versions of FEF Twiddler. And as you can tell here, I put like, you know, my Corrin plush here, the time travel button, and I used a time traveling background spiral thing, which I just put Corrins there. I felt like that was pretty fitting here. It was very funny. And I remember this one getting a little bit of attention. I remember a Japanese Corrin artist seeing this and, you know, reposting it and saying like, this person's thumbnails are always so funny. And, you know, I that feels like such a huge honor. You know, it's such a huge compliment for me, like getting that kind of praise from someone who doesn't even speak the same language as you. You know, say like, you know, you're doing a good job. I don't know, it feels good. I can't help but smile and feel giddy about it. But yeah, unfortunately, FEF Twiddler still broke the chapter immediately after. Older versions weren't working until like a version, but the issue is I couldn't add any more units. So I was just like, okay, well, unfortunately, looks like this is as far as we go. We're gonna add like the last few bits of Corrin, and you know, they're gonna be the last few Corrin that are gonna be in the run for us. And that is why the next thumbnail looks like this. The final Corrin Quest Harvest, I believe I titled it. You know, a bit of a more sad, somber vibe to it. And you know, this one was directly taken from the Fire Emblem Fates manga, where Corrin is looking up to the sky, and I felt like that was pretty fitting. I recolored it. I think this is some of my best recolor work in general. You know, having her in like the middle of the plains and the mountains, and beautiful sunset with the plush Corrin staring down like the wise old sage that she is. And yeah, for this specific recolor though, this is the first time I've done color rendering. At least I think that's called rendering. You could call it color correction. I'm not 100% sure, because you know, I see that render term get tossed around a lot in like digital artists. To me, it sounds like, you know, you put extra shading and color work into it. So, you know, that's what I perceived it. But if I'm wrong, please correct me. I actually do want to know, because every time I look it up, the answers are pretty vague, at least when I last checked. Yeah, for the color correction, I'll show like a before and after here, and I think both of them look really, really nice. Obviously I have it this way, very yellowy because it is sunsetty, and I think it'll work pretty well. I remember people really liking the look of this thumbnail. So yeah. Next one. Yeah. Again, I took like a Corrin image from like a panel. I don't even remember where. It was just one where, you know, she was looking, you see a backside view of her. I thought it was particularly funny to have her reacting to her own Corindoro. I don't know. I feel like if you're a fictional character and see yourself as a, like a Doro version of yourself, just like, what would that, how would you react, right? So I feel like I wanted to portray that, just be funny and silly. And this thumbnail like blew up on Twitter. I like posted on stream and it's just like, stream up. It just like blew up my notifications. I'm like, oh my god. I guess people really like the look and idea of this thumbnail. And also just Lottie's Corindoro. I mean, it's a recipe for success, you know? Like anything this Doro touches becomes gold practically. So yeah, again, big thank you, Lottie Kamu. And of course, it was a little challenging to get the perspective right, mostly because like the coloring of like Corrin here. Like if you take real life physics here, I don't think the perspective actually works. But you know, because it's a thumbnail, it's pretty cramped, and I have a very I want to follow rule of thirds as much as I can here, while having the objects be, you know, relatively big and noticeable. So I had it look like this. I feel like if this was a real life, Corrin would probably be like a couple, like maybe a feet or two taller than this Corindoro here, but with like a really big head. So I guess maybe this is actually a chibi Corrin, you know? But we'll never know. As for the next one, this is gonna be the final Corrin thumbnail. Oh my god, this recording has gotten to 1 hour and 20 minutes plus. Obviously it won't be that long at this point in the video because I'll cut it down a bit. But oh my god, my throat is like going out, so I'm just gonna go over this one very briefly. This one is based off the image of someone putting Elfelt Valentine from Guilty Gear, specifically the Strive plush, I believe, and ice cubing her. I don't know the context of it, but like I always see it in the Strive community because I am in the Strive community. And I thought, you know, because the maps at this point in Silent Waves had some ice themes going on there, I was like, yeah, let's ice cube up Corrin. And I'm kind of thankful I did, because there were like several made enemies with Staff Savant free staffs, so I kind of planned it really brilliantly there. Obviously the idea is I just put Corrin in an ice cube. This is directly ripped straight from that Elfelt ice cube image. I just removed the Elfelt and made the Corrin there, and do my best to try to make it look convincing that she was in an ice cube, and I think I did my job pretty well. I also put like a bit of some particle effects to make it look like, you know, it's really cold here, there's some snow. Make it look cold, and I think I did. I think I succeeded in that department. Corrin's left leg, like her left leg, not, you know, what's left on the image here, was like slightly off, so I had to like physically remove it from Photoshop and like insert it again. Kind of like move it because it was slightly too low and it was extending beyond the ice cube. But aside from that, that was the only struggle I had with this thumbnail. But yeah, that is pretty much it for me, you know, talking about pretty much every single Corrin thumbnail that I've made so far. Again, thank you for over like 1,400 subscribers. Thank you for helping me reach almost 4,000 watch time hours. I'm pretty sure if you watch this video, like if there's at least a couple of you getting to this point, you'll probably help me reach that already by then. But yeah, that'll be it for today, and I'll see you guys sometime soon. Bye, Pia!